Well, probably one of the most common questions that I get is, when you grew up, were you like entrepreneurial? And I was not at all. My goal eventually is like ultimate freedom. I have a tremendous fear of failure, and I think it's taken me a long time to figure that out.
Meet Dan Crosby, an unstoppable force transforming industries with his innovative ventures from BioSteel Sports to Canadian Protein. Dan's visionary leadership and diverse portfolio make him a true game changer in business and beyond.
If I was micromanaging every type of situation, I wouldn't be able to be here. Good people around you, man.
Yeah.
Like, having the people that have the knowledge to be able to scale, I think is really important. Have you ever read that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People? So I think that's the best business book. I don't think you even need another business book besides that. So for me, it's bringing in the right people to lead the way on the daily stuff and execute on, say, my high level ideas.
You're listening to the David F Haas Podcast, and in this episode, I sit down with the new owner of BioSteel, Dan Crosby. He's a local entrepreneur who also owns Canadian Protein and Coachwood Golf Course, as well as a huge real estate portfolio. He was able to do all of this before the age of 42. This guy is literally a wealth of knowledge, and him and I dig deep into what makes him tick and what makes him successful. So I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation with Dan Crosby. Yeah, the reason I want to have you on the podcast, I mean, obviously you've had a ton of accomplishments, and you've just done so much. And I was reading through your LinkedIn, and I was just kind of like watching you document your journey. And like the big new thing is the BioSteel, which is just like, I mean, I can't even as an entrepreneur like wrap my mind around that deal, what you were able to do there, and to put that thing and to try and get it back onto track. And so I just thought like let's have a discussion. Like,
sure.
The first question I would want to ask you, and this is what I kind of ask all like entrepreneurs that have been able to be able to achieve some success, is like what do you think it is in you that allowed you to kind of like, because you got BioSteel and Canadian Protein and Coachwood, which is the old Fox Glen, and probably things that I don't even know about. Like what else you got going on? I don't even know.
Yeah, real estate portfolio. I started a real estate portfolio like pretty much the same time as the supplement game, and I grew that to like I got a couple hundred homes around here, and so it's pretty decent.
Jesus.
Yeah, we got an apartment building in North Miami Beach and Michigan, Canton, Michigan, and stuff like that. So yeah, busy with the real estate. Not as busy as I was, but I was getting really heavy into real estate. But then BioSteel came up, so the real estate's kind of taken a back seat. So yeah.
So what is it? So what do you think? I mean, like, because when I hear that, like, I just think like, oh man, it seems like a lot of work.
Yeah,
it's like just busy. Like, because I've been running my own companies, but on a smaller scale. Since I was 16 years old, essentially, right? And so, what was it that kind of like motivated you to like to get this thing going? And what was it that allowed you also, as a caveat, that allowed you to like to expand at the rate that you expanded? Because you and I are like similar in age, I think.
42.
Yeah, you're 42?
42.
Oh,
yeah.
Right. You're younger than I am. I'm 46.
The beard is
the gray beard. I know
the beard's
happening to me too.
The beard's fooling everybody. I think it's I have a tremendous fear of failure. Yeah, and I think it's taken me a long time to figure that out, in all honesty. I grew up, I was not, probably one of the most common questions that I get is, when you grew up, were you like entrepreneurial? And I was not at all. I thought I was going to, I worked TPT at GM. I went to school for engineering. Then I tried all kinds of different programs, businesses and that. I dropped out. I never went back. So I'm also a dropout. But then all my buddies were graduating with like really good degrees, and I've got engineers, doctors, software engineers, like you name it, business guys. And I was working at a gym, personal training, and I remember this like yesterday, and I think of this probably on a daily basis. One of my best friends that I grew up with, we were at Tomfooleries. Is it Tomfooleries on that was on here online?
Here online, yeah.
So we were at Tomfooleries, and he came back because he was in Sweden doing a placement for engineer with WET Group over in Sweden, and he came back and he made he was like basically asking me like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm working midnights at the gym on Dougal, and he was like, he made some kind of comment being like that, and that's why you're a personal trainer or something like that. He made like a slight where it was more, I feel like you're better than what you're doing. Right. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think you could do better, but also kind of like what are you doing kind of thing, right? And it kind of like never got away from me. And I think about that like often, like very often. I never talk to him about it because it doesn't matter. I almost want to, he for sure wouldn't remember it. Like I already know, like it probably wasn't, it was like nothing to him comment, right? We were all, you know, early 20s and it wouldn't matter to him, but it like that sticks with me big time. And it makes me feel like there's like I in that moment I was like destined for so much more, and I had to like prove them wrong, you know? And I think that that's like a heavily motivating thing. And I think that a lot of people, what they try to do in that type of situation is they like try to fix themselves. And I somewhat disagree with it, to be honest with you. I feel like you should just use whatever motivation you should figure out that you have, and like ride that so hard that, cause you know, what are you going to do? You're going to spend your whole life trying to fix your problems. Like everybody's got problems. I got all kinds of problems. That's the least of them, in all honesty, you know? So, you know, so I'm going to ride it, and I'm going to ride it until it stops working. And then I'm going to try to find the next fire that I can ride.
I think that's interesting because like, I think a lot of what motivates people for success is something along those lines, like some sort of, you know, deep rooted insecurity. I know that's what it was for me too. Right. It was like deep insecurities that, you know, I've got to the root of and where it all came from. And for me, it was about like not having enough as a kid and never want to feeling that shame again of like, you know, driving the shitty car, having the shitty house. Like just, I didn't want to feel that pain again. And so it motivated me to succeed. And it's still in me. Like, you know, I just then kind of never fail. Like I just won't allow myself to fail. Right. And so, but I think where it does become a problem though is eventually, you know, when you have the success and you have the outwardly success and you've kind of checked all of those boxes, and then you're still like not internally, like you're still feeling like unfulfilled or not at peace or whatever, then that's time to maybe start looking backwards. And that's usually actually the kind of people that I work with. It's like the guys that have like checked all the boxes, and then they say, what the fuck, I keep checking these boxes, and like every milestone I reach, nothing changes inside of me, right? But I do agree with you though 100% on, if you're motivated by something, like for me, my motivation was to not feel the shame of being broke, essentially, right? And that worked for me until it didn't anymore, right? And so then you got to find a new passion, right? And for when I was able to undo all of that stuff, that's what led me to like more levels of success. So yeah, I 100% agree that don't look at your like these negatives as like such a negative, because they can be super motivating.
For sure,
you know? And you know, the thing that I'm really interested in is like your ability to kind of like scale. You know, like you like just like you've just done like so much. Like you're 42, like holy fuck, like you did so much. It's like, how did you do that?
Good people around you, man. Like you know, leveraging. You have to leverage. You can't scale without leverage, right? And you know, having the people that have the knowledge to be able to scale, I think is really important. Having the tenacity to be able to do it, because it's scary, right? And then having the, you know, figuring out how to, you know, grab onto the bandwidth to allow yourself to do it. So, you know, it's a combination of all kinds of things, right? And I mean, I guess you have to be somewhat also fearless. I know we talked about fear, but then you also have to be a little fearless, right? Where, you know, this was like the whole BioSteel thing was wild. Like that was a wild fear. Like I've never in my entire, you know, I've been doing my own thing since my early 20s, and I never, when I was going through this deal, when I didn't know if I was going to get it or not, and I had like $1 million on the line, because it was like a very small deposit in the grander scheme of things, but you had to put $1 million cash as a deposit on the line basically for this, and I remember thinking like, you know, if this doesn't go through and, you know, I don't check the boxes or something happens on my end, then I'm going to lose that. I remember going through this and I was like shortness of breath. It was the first, and I'm in good shape.
And
it was wild, man. It was wild.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny because like entrepreneurs have a tendency to do that. And this is actually probably in that rooted of like the deep insecurities that go on. It's like, you know, I remember when I sold Treehouse like a couple of years ago, and I had built this great coaching business, and I sold Treehouse, and I had like all this money, and I was like, hey, fuck, I can kind of sit back if I wanted to, you know, like not that I even really have the motivation to sit back, but I'm like, you know, I got it. Like I've done it. Like I've kind of like got the bank, and I bought the Audi R8, and I'm like, I feel like life has kind of handed me everything that I've ever wanted. Right. And then I immediately invest into Lungo Vita and like put every single dollar that I had into that place. And I think that's like a cycle, like for like entrepreneurs to like, you kind of have to like almost go all in on shit, because if you don't, I don't ever think it ever kind of has that same weight that is required for you to kind of like really, you know, take the thing to the moon kind of thing.
You feel alive. feel like you're chasing that initial high.
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
And like that gambling or thing, right? Like always trying to chase that jackpot.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
Yeah, and this brings me to one of the things that you had said here, which I thought was really good. It's like the most amount of growth in anything I do is when I focus. And so it's like, now when you say that, when I align with that 100%, like one of the books that I love is called The One Thing, and it's about the power of focusing on one thing. But then you got a guy like you, even me, which I'm way more small scale than you, but I have two major things that I'm working on, which is Lungo Vita and like launching and curating my coaching business and platform. And so even that, having those two, I can see like the not giving my full attention to anything. And so I recognize one of the things, of course, is having good people that you can rely on and trust to run your companies. But how do you have focus when you have so many things going on?
Yeah, you almost don't, right? So you have to almost bring in people to steer the ship and own everything, rather than you trying to be fixated on micromanaging those things. And that's what I've done, but I'm still involved at a high level, which is why I'm able to be here, right? At the same time. So if I was micromanaging every type of situation, I wouldn't be able to be here, right? Which that's not the goal. My goal eventually is like ultimate freedom, right? So for me, it's bringing in the right people to lead the way on the daily stuff and execute on, say, my high level ideas.
Yes.
Which is what I bring and what I feel like what I've been good at, right? So I'm still not like I'm arguably not even the best anymore at everything that goes on in the business, except for high level what I want out of everything. Where if like this is the North Star, I'm good at setting the North Star and motivating people to get to that North Star. But I'm no longer the best at in the early days. Photoshop, coding, like I learned all that stuff myself. I'm by far not the best now, by far. And then, even like managing people, I'm not the best. HR, I'm not the best. Even, daily stuff from a technical side of things and operations. I'm just management. Like I'm not the best anymore. I brought in people that were a lot better than I am to be able to manage that. Right. Nor was it what I wanted to end up doing like long term, but I did it for a while. But in order to scale, I think you have to bring in better people than you to be able to do it. Right?
Yeah, and I think that's I think that's probably just a lesson. That's one of the things that help you scale so quickly. Is just I think a lesson you probably learned quicker than I did. Like I managed Treehouse. Like I bought that place when I was 22, and I managed it, like literally in management for 15 years. And it wasn't until about that 15-year mark where I was bringing in enough income where I finally felt I could take that step back and just align with like the strategy of it. I could pay people properly to do it. And then when I opened up Lungo Vita, I was able to do that exact same thing in like 2 years. Right? But you just got like a crash course, and you just went faster than I think I did, because I think it took me a long time to like loosen the reins of control, like, because I think that's what's required to scale. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think some people are looking at the tip of the iceberg here too, right? I've been in this for 15 years, right? So it wasn't really until, maybe, a good part of like into a decade of me doing this that I really, even into like my early to mid 30s before I really started to kind of, take things to the next level. So it was a solid decade of eating shit the whole time. Like it really was, and I didn't buy my first like, exotic car until I was, well into, it was like mid to late 30s.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I really made sure that I could do it before that. And so it wasn't, it was a long time before I was able to really adopt that kind of mentality too. Just like you, it wasn't like necessarily early on. I think it also has to do with the nature of the way that I structured my businesses. I have, they were predominantly e-commerce based prior to this. So e-commerce is very easy to scale. I did own a retail store in Windsor. I closed it, sold it, and then went all in on e-commerce because I saw the writing on the wall, right? E-commerce was coming strong. And then, I went all in on e-commerce, and then I decided to start making my own product. And that's when things really started to shift too, is, owning that control of quality and production and being vertically integrated, and that's taken us to the next level for sure. That's also a reason why I bought BioSteel, to bring that manufacturing in-house. And it was a strategic buy. And I mean, being vertically integrated is if you look at the biggest companies in the world, a lot of them are that way. I mean, you know, they own points of production, they own vertical integration, you know, they own that. They own the chips where, you know, if it's a software company, they own the chips that are going in or whatever kind of, you know, hardware is their software is going in. Like a lot of these, you know, Microsoft and all these guys, like a lot of them are vertically integrated, and that allows for a lot of scale too. Yeah. So I think it might just be the virtue of the type of business that I'm in as well.
Yeah, that's actually that was the point that was coming to my mind, was like, it's like when, especially for like young entrepreneurs, when you're starting out, like, you really want to, I think, put some thought into like the pot that you're going to plant yourself in. And, you know, and I planted myself in the hospitality sector, which was a really shitty pot to plant myself in, you know, and like, and so, but because I had that, you know, not wanting to fail in me as well, you know, I was able to make it successful. But, you know, if I always think back, if I would have just, you know, taken some step back and like, you know, said, hey, if I'm going to go at this entrepreneurial thing, like, where are the biggest opportunities? And because I was, and then that's one of the questions I had for you. I was like, where does patience play a role in your life? Because one of my problems is that I've been a very impatient person. I'm always kind of looking for like the, you know, I don't want to call it the quick buck, but like that's essentially is really what it is. You know, it's like I was bartending and managing a nightclub, and so the quick, easy step was just to go quickly to open up my own place, and Treehouse was available, and I bought into it, and it was like simple. But then it's like I didn't take that step back and go like, what's the big picture here? Like, what could I really do? And I don't want to say I missed a boat, because I learned a lot, and I got a lot out of my system in the bar business, and you know, it put me where I am now. But how do you do with like patience?
I don't do well.
Yeah,
I am very impatient.
That was going to be your answer. Yeah,
I'm very impatient. But the thing about bringing in the people that I'm talking about is they allow you to, you know, I have, you know, say for example, one of my right-hand men, like he's a very systematic, kind of very organized. So he's everything like I'm not, right? So he'll take my ideas and he'll say, okay, well, like this is the timeline realistically speaking, but then I'm like, okay, well, you know, cut that down in half minimum. And then he's like, it's just not possible, right? So I'm now at this point forced to be patient, because we don't really have a choice, because I've seen what happens when you're not patient, and the scale that we're at now, if you screw up, you know, you could have, you know, as an example, I mean, we do significant business with Costco, right? And if you're trying to cut corners because you're impatient and you have that amount of product going out, and then something happens, there's a recall, like who knows what, then like you're on the hook. Right. And it has serious implications. You know, even if we're impatient launching a sale, say on Canadian Protein, right? And if we're not doing all the checks and balances in the back end to making sure that, you know, something works right, you know, we'll get 1,000 emails in a day from customers that we have to deal with from a customer service perspective, because like maybe a code's not working, or something like the sale isn't operating correctly like it should in our advertising. So like I don't have a choice now to be a little more patient and kind of sit back and say, okay, fine, like do your thing. But in the beginning, it was very much like just go. You know, if it's 80% ready, just turn the switch on. You know, and still till this day, I still take that kind of perspective. I don't wait till things are perfect. You know, because I think if you try to do that, you'll get nothing done. And but at least the liability portion of it, I think, has been taken out of it. So I think that's what I've gotten a little bit better at, but I'm still impatient. Yeah, and I think you did, you know, what I did as well, was because I've always called myself like a build the plane while fly it kind of guy. You know, it's like I would launch something and someone would say like, it's not even done yet. I'm like, we'll build it as the sales come in from it, or whatever it may be. And my manager out at Lungo Vita is very similar. Like she's like a very attention to detail person. So how has that shift been from you? Like, have you kind of just been able to give it all to the people that are good with attention to detail, or have you struggled with like the wanting to go still? I don't really feel like I don't think I struggled. Maybe in the beginning when I did it, but I don't think I had the right people. I think it's because I didn't trust them fully. I think, you know, I still don't trust people fully, but I don't think I trusted them enough to hand over some of the reins. But I think the people that I have now, I trust enough to hand the reins over, right? And they've been with me for a good amount. They're smart, super smart. I've seen them execute. I think that's a big portion of being able to do that is, verifying their execution, right? I think trustability comes with that too. If you're going to do what you say you're going to do and it works, then that's easy to trust, and then you build on that. But it's been a lot easier. I'm very much more, but at the same time, if you don't, then I will like really come down on you. Mm-hmm. Like I'm very much like that guy too, where if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, like I have no room for you in my business, just zero.
And see that's for sure another thing that, like, not that I'm doing this comparison, but I think for anyone listening, it's like that's kind of what they'll be doing. They'll be like how did Dan do all this when he's only 42? And I'm sitting here at 46 and going, like, looking at you going like, man, what is different about Dan than me? But that's one of the things for sure is internally I'm like a people pleaser essentially, right? And I've been undoing that over the years, but I will sometimes not call it like it is, right? Someone's not producing the way they're supposed to. And I think you hit like the nail on the head, is like having that ability just to call it out and not worry about whether the person likes you or if it's going to upset them or whatever, just to call it out, because you're actually doing people a disservice by not telling them that they're, not producing, because then they continue to kind of suck. Yeah. And if they go to their next job, they're going to suck there too, right? And so I recognize all that, and I'm still in the process of like myself, like working through that. But that's definitely like one of the skills I think that's been able to accelerate you. And then I also loved what you said about like, and I kind of want to just like put a pin in that because it's so good. It's like when people execute for you, that's what builds the trust. It's like if they say, hey, I'm going to get X, Y, and Z done, and they come and X, Y, and Z is done the way you want it, it's like, oh yeah, okay, this is a person that I can put more resources behind, money, whatever that may be.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things you said about BioSteel, it says, one of the biggest learning curves I've faced since acquiring BioSteel has been managing its cash flow requirements. Yeah. And that's kind of like what you already touched upon. But I can see that as, I'm feeling that at Lungo Vita. It's like, if you're not on that cash flow, which I've personally kind of never been, like I was in the bar business. It was like Saturday night, we had Saturday night sales, and I knew I was going to have that money. But now, like with Lungo Vita, especially with the expansion that we're doing out there, because we're constantly reinvesting, if I'm not careful with that money I reinvest, I might set myself up in the winter to not have enough money. And I'm guessing that you're feeling those same cycles with BioSteel. Yeah.
So the cash flow cycle is different with BioSteel than, say, Canadian Protein. So the difference is when you buy a product online. So, well, for me, let's back up a little bit. So for context, so I make my own product. Yeah. So my raw material suppliers have, I predominantly have, 30, 60 days, call it 30 days with them. So I'll get the material. When it lands, the 30-day terms kick in. So within the first week, I run testing on the product for, say, the first 2 to 3 days, whatever. It gets cleared. That same week that I receive it, if we don't have the product, in stock, it's in manufacturing, say, even that week. Then it hits the website. It's for sale. By the time I sell out of that raw material that I've just bought, I've already got the money from you, and then I'm using that money to pay that raw material supplier back, and then I also have a surplus because it's profit. Right. It's the same concept of Costco, right? If typically what Costco does is they sell out their product on their store. Like I'll give you an example too. With Costco, a lot of times what happens with our product when it lands in there, and this is like not the norm. So when Costco places an order, they send a PO and that product's shipped. It's rare that it takes even over a week for that product to hit the store floor in Costco. So they get the money for that product before they even have to pay us for it back. Right. Yeah. Right. So it's a very similar cash cycle with Costco, right? And then Costco's terms are also, say, for example, 30 days, sometimes even higher. Right. So with us, it's the same thing. We're getting that money when we have to pay our suppliers. With BioSteel, though, I'm getting the raw. So I haven't started. We just start making product this month for BioSteel in Windsor. But previously, you're getting the product made at a co-packer, right? You have 30-day terms with a co-packer. It lands in your facility or warehousing or whatever, and then by the time it even gets pulled out of your warehouse, it could be like 90 days. So you're having to pay the raw material co-packer or the manufacturer before that product sells. So we have like tens of millions of dollars sitting in inventory that
you can't sell yet.
We haven't sold yet,
right, yeah.
But we've paid the raw material or co-packing manufacturer for that product that's sitting in inventory. So it's a very different game. It's a very, very different game. So, ideally speaking, once we bring it into once we bring manufacturing in house, what's going to happen is we're not going to have so much raw material on hand, so long as we have all of the raw material on hand for, say, 3 to 6 month lead time, which dramatically draws down our need for having so much just inventory sitting there in terms of from a value perspective. It drops it down by like a tenth.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and what a new challenge. And like with respect to selling BioSteel, it's like you're selling this stuff like everywhere. Like it's like in convenience stores and grocery stores, and so has that been like a challenge as well? Because you went from like online, now you have Costco with Canadian Protein, but now you're like dealing with all these other suppliers.
Yeah, it's been a while. I have no experience with retail. It's wild. So one of the things that was very unbeknownst to me, I guess, is when you walk into a retail store, all the products on that shelf, they pay to be there. It's a pay to play situation.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Yeah.
You see a product sitting at the end of the row at Costco, they're paying for that end cap. Like you see a product sitting in the Gatorade aisle, you're paying to be there.
And are they paying like it's like actually they're paying a fee, or they're paying a fee?
Yeah, you're paying a listing fee.
Shit.
Yeah, we just got back in Circle K.
Yep.
We had to negotiate our listing fees again.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and then we're talking like $250,000 in Ontario alone.
Jesus.
Yeah, like it's big. Like, they're not. You can negotiate if you're a strong brand. Like at least BioSteel is a stronger brand. But if you're a new brand, you want to break into retail. Yeah, it's costly.
Yeah,
big time. That's why I always advocate. Retail's not all what it's cracked up to be. It's great if you have scale, and it's great if you have, I guess, negotiating power, and you have a story behind the brand where, you could pull data to show sell-through rates. But if you're new, e-commerce all the way to start. You have to show some sort of data to support, and that's how Costco came to us with respect to Canadian Protein and Loblaws, right? Like they came to us, we didn't go to them.
Oh, nice, yeah. And that's what I think that was the advantage with BioSteel though, because it already had this great story and this brand and everything, and so that allowed you to kind of like come back into those retail spots, whereas and they either look like Prime or something like that. It's like they had like Jake Paul and those guys, they had that value already. And so it's like for some guy to start a bottling and try and get into retail, it's like the challenges are probably
I highly doubt that Prime paid full up for their listing fees, if at all any. The brand was so strong when it came out that I bet you they didn't have to, or they paid very little. But I mean, even with BioSteel, I talk about Circle K. Going into the bankruptcy of BioSteel, when I assumed it, they owed Circle K, I think, over $400,000 because they went bankrupt and then they didn't pay their fees. It was so even when you drive by Circle K, that 2 for $5, for example, of like 2 drinks, if the regular price is like $7, and now you have for say 2 drinks, the regular price would be $7, and now it's like 2 for $5, you fund that spread of $2. So that's where BioSteel didn't pay that and claimed bankruptcy. So the brand BioSteel owed Circle K like $400,000, and they were adamant about not relisting us. But then we started showing strong sales in like 7-Eleven and other vendors across the country, and they were like, okay, we're going to bring you back. For like a little bit less of a hefty fee. But I was not aware that every single thing in that store, wherever that product is, it's for sale. It's all for sale.
Wild. That's I mean, you're getting deep into like
every store is like its own little miniature city for real estate.
Interesting.
Every single store.
It's
all for sale. And you could pay like the pole huggers out there, where there's like stuff on the poles, the banners in the windows, like all the stickers on the fridge. It all costs money to do that.
Interesting.
All of it.
Here's another thing that you said that I really loved. It says, I'll admit, I've struggled with shiny object syndrome for years. As an entrepreneur, it's easy to get caught up chasing the next big thing, the next idea or the next opportunity that promises to be revolutionary. And so, I mean, this is for sure that's when I read that, I'm like, that's me. I was scrolling through your LinkedIn and I was like, yeah. So it's like, how do you feel where you're at with that now? Like, cause I mean, you had this like amazing portfolio and you got this big giant, BioSteel now that I could really see that there's energy for you behind it all. So are you content with like, this is the next thing, or you think you're going to get the shiny objects?
I have to focus now.
Yep.
Yeah. I got to focus. I mean, I'm staring down the barrel of, maybe, the goal, I think that this and, compared to or combined with Canadian Protein, I think it could be, $1 billion valuation in maybe like 5 years. So we're tracking that way. So if I don't have focus, I think I'm gonna risk that. So I think it's time to turn things down and really kind of put the blinders on at this point.
Yeah, right on. And looking back on your life, when you say that you've struggled with it in the past, like maybe give me some examples of like what that looked like, because I know that's been my problem.
So I'll give you. There's a perfect example right now. So we're making product right now. Well, I'm in pretty deep talks with the MLB right now.
Okay.
And the MLB loves BioSteel because it's NSF certified product. The fact that I have a facility now in Windsor that is NSF certified, we just got our certification back in January. It's actually supposed to be announced like today potentially. Which is kind of a big deal in the pro sports world to be NSF certified. So the MLB loves it. The MLB loves the fact that we have our own facility. I own a brand that the MLB already uses immensely, and like we probably have the biggest adoption out of all the pro sports for BioSteel in the MLB, and then second would probably be NHL. So they love the product. They love the fact that we're NSF certified. We're coming out with a protein RTD, which they want, which is huge. And then I told them too that we can make bars for them, like protein bars.
Yep.
But protein bar manufacturing is kind of not it's intense. It's intense. There's not a whole lot of profit in there unless you're one of the bigger brands, and that's a prime example of guys at work are like, what are you doing? Like, what are we going to really make off the bars? We don't have any listing for bars in any of the retail stores. And I'm like, well, the MLB wants it, shiny object, right? And I'm trying to sell myself on the fact that I want to build a relationship deeper with the MLB and a product that they really want, because there's not really NSF certified bars out in the market, and we'd be one of the only ones with an existing brand that they already like. Right. So that's kind of like what I'm struggling with even currently right now. And that's a very shiny object, because when you have the brass at the MLB telling you, and like they're text messaging me like on Saturday mornings, being like, hey, any updates? Like, what's going on? What do you think? Can we get some samples? Like, it's kind of, it's you're a little starstruck, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's a big deal, man. But it might be a situation where it's like, listen, guys, like, that's not our focus right now. Maybe in the future, maybe, but as of right now, I might have to peel that back a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
And having to say that to the MLB too, which is I get that, for sure.
I'm gonna try to do it, but I'm not gonna do it if I have to sacrifice our bigger like picture.
Yeah, good. And I think that's what comes like with entrepreneurs, and is like that learning how to say no to opportunity, because I think one of the things that I've noticed in my life, and I'm guessing you probably noticed it, is like there's opportunities everywhere, and people get wrapped up and then there's no opportunity. It's like I feel like I have too much opportunity, right? And it's like, which one is it, the one that I want to get that focus on? Sure. Because that's what killed me in the past, was that I saw opportunities everywhere, and so then I would grab that opportunity, and then I ended up giving everything like a half-ass effort kind of thing, right? And so I think when you get like really deep where you are now, it's like, and me too with Lingua Vita, just on a smaller scale, is like I just have to be like laser like focused, and this has to be it, because if I get pulled in too many directions, usually end up having to scale or reel that all back in. For sure. Like, I did it in the bar business too. I opened up like 3 other bars. I got into partnerships that weren't great, and I'd spread myself too thin. And so I got rid of all the bars, closed one, sold one, and went right back to trios, got focused, and like just 10x the sales like crazy. And so I think that is like what happened. That it's like you said it perfectly in that post. It's like that shiny object, and learning, not even learning, like finding what it is inside of you to be able to say no, right? And I think that is like probably tuning into like, there's opportunities everywhere. Like, I'm just going to pick the one I think is the best. And I think you've done that with Canadian Protein and BioSteel. It's like, you're like, this is it, right?
Yeah. It has scale. I love businesses that have scale. I mean, that's the biggest thing for me. That's why I decided when I went after this, I was gonna, tune down the real estate a little bit, because it's harder to scale brick and mortar than it is to scale, products and manufacturing and CPG brands and stuff like that. Really, the only bottleneck is our marketing ability and production ability. So so really this has a lot. I looked at it from, okay, well, what's gonna, as a frivolous example, but what's gonna put a B behind my name quickest, right? At the end of the day, right? Because I'm not necessarily passionate about BioSteel or the nutrition game. I'm not necessarily passionate about real estate. I'm passionate about business, I guess you could say, and even that's a stretch, I feel. But what's gonna accomplish I'm passionate about being free. That's what I'm passionate about. Like, that's ultimate freedom is what I'm passionate about, and how can I build that? So for me, what's going to get me that the quickest? And this was the answer.
Yeah. And I think that word freedom is like a tricky one too, because it looks different for different people. Sure, and from what I've been leaning into is that I thought like that business was what I wanted, what I was after my whole entire life, or like the being rich is what I thought I was after. But then I recognized it was like, I just wanted to look rich back in the day. Like, I just wanted to appear to be rich. And now it's like, I'm really focused on, I've done this inward shift on like wealth creation. It's like, I really want to create wealth. And that looks very different than looking rich, so it's like, I mean, I got that car in my garage. That's like this huge expense that could be earning me money. It could have been invested into Lungo Vita. And so that was that inward turn. And then that's where I saw that connected to like the freedom, right? As opposed to just like trying to go after some sort of goal there, right? So I'm guessing that you're probably feeling that. Why don't we why don't we shift gears a little bit and talk about like what's going on politically? Because I've heard you on podcasts talking about stuff, and I think you and I had shared a lot of views during COVID and everything that went on there. But what do you think is happening, and is it affecting you too? Like the tariffs and what's going on with Trump? I mean, I have a take on it, which. And the thing I guess I'm really stuck on is like, what does he really want? Like, does he really want Canada to be the 51st state? If that is really what he's after, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of pushback from it. Yeah. From a personal standpoint, it would be good for me, like, because there's just like, the States, there's just so much more opportunity. But I also understand like, Canadian pride and all of that. And I understand the emotional charge behind people and pushing back on this whole entire thing. So I'd just be interested to hear what you think about the whole thing.
Yeah, so the tariffs do affect me. Yeah. We buy a good amount of American product. A lot of the ingredients, a lot of the whey protein comes from the States, but also doesn't. So it's just the problem. The problem was shifting gears that quick, because it was Trump that put the tariffs in first, and then it was Trudeau that reacted like 48 hours prior to the deadline. So it didn't give us enough time to shift gears, right? From even, we as an example, we have the protein RTDs going into Costco in March. So if we put 25% tariff on that coming across the border, because it's currently being made in the States now because we don't have in-house manufacturing for that yet. Okay. That all of a sudden, like, we're all of a sudden going to lose on like millions of dollars, like around 12%. Oh, Jesus. Like, that's a big problem. Yes. Right? So overnight, right? So it didn't give us enough time to shift. Yeah. And it's already in production. We already bought all the raw materials. Like, we already committed, right? So for Trudeau to do that overnight was crazy. The fact that Trump's doing it, I also feel is, I don't blame him for doing it, because he's taking the position of, well, this is my country and I'm looking out for number one, and that's it. Yeah. I don't blame him for doing it. I think the way he did it is by far, if you ever read like The Art of the Deal by him, like I get it. I get why he's doing it. I have a feeling what's going to end up happening, and it worked at the end of the day. Like, look at, like, Trudeau bent the knee somehow, right? Which changed. I'm going to assume he took a knee on it. Then Mexico took a knee, and at the end of the day, like, you're beholden to the biggest consuming country probably in the world. So it makes sense that you have to take a knee. I get it, right? But I have a feeling what's going to end up happening with all this, there's going to be some kind of meet in the middle. And then because of, and it might even be not even in the middle. It might be just like a little tiny win, but Trump's going to make it sound a lot bigger of a win than it actually is.
Yeah.
In order to, rile up the American people even more, in order to, I guess, gain his adoption even more, saying like, we're winning on a geopolitical platform, which again, I don't blame him for doing it. I don't blame him. Do I like it? No, obviously,
Right.
but it's shit.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I don't blame him for doing it. I wish Canada would take a stronger approach to the way that this country is run.
Yep.
In all honesty, I think we have a lot of natural resources that we could really leverage against other countries, and I don't think we're doing it. I'm not super dialed in with politics anymore.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, one of the reasons why I'm not is because I just don't believe that they act in our favor. I think that there's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes that we're not privy to, and that's why a lot of things don't make a lot of logical sense, because we are not in these rooms that they are discussing these policies. So yes, of course, how are we going to fully understand them? And that's why I think it creates a lot of polarizing scenarios, because you have these strong assumptions that nobody has full context of, and then people kind of build on, I guess, rumors, and then people just end up fighting about it. So, and then at the same time too, I think what a lot of people don't really understand is the government is just people. And I think that if you put certain people in certain positions, they're corruptible.
Yep.
And I don't think people realize that. I think people assume that there's just the government and you just trust the government.
Yeah.
But really, the government is just a bunch of people.
Yeah.
The government is just a bunch of people like us sitting in this room and it's no different. And they're yeah, sure, they're supposed to be held to a different standard, but that's why you see all kinds of this stupid corruption going on, because they're just people, and people are corruptible.
Yep.
So like I don't understand why people can't understand that. I think that if people just understood that, yeah, it's just a bunch of people in a room, then I think it would be easier for them to understand, like, maybe we shouldn't trust them all the time, right? That's my take on it.
Yeah.
So for me, I just don't trust politicians. I don't trust government. I especially don't trust politicians that are lifer politicians.
Yeah.
I think I have a big problem with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the issues with politics, is that you have politicians that are not running a country like essentially a business, which is probably the closest thing that you can compare it to. And when you have lifer politicians that don't have real world experience, you have Canada. Right?
Yeah, no,
as an example.
I couldn't agree more. Like, I think you hit everything nail on the head, and I think that's what you said about Trump is like, that he's seeing things that essentially we're not seeing, and that's the biggest thing. It's like, I don't think we have all the context. No. I don't think we really know, and I think the one thing that I don't think a lot of Canadians realize, and it's like because of what I do, it's like my goal is to like step out of emotion of everything and try and make just a clear decision, not from this emotional response. The emotional response in me wants to say, even though like I like Trump, even because I think he's that outsider, like I want to say like, hey man, fuck you, like why are you picking on the little guy kind of thing. Like that's what I want to say emotionally. But if I step back from that emotional, response that is wanting to defend, and I look at this thing, it's like Canada's economy pretty much kind of only exists because of the United States. It's like you look at Chrysler right here in Windsor, like the Chrysler plant. My uncle used to manage the Chrysler plant, and there's like they produce, let's just say 1,000 cars a day, something crazy, right? It's like 1% of those cars stay in Canada.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what would happen if that trading partner went away? We would be like, we don't even have the amount of people to basically sustain the economy that we've built.
Yeah.
Our economy and our country has been built on trading with the U.S. And I think the good thing that will come from all of this is maybe what will happen, and if Canada creates a big shift, Canada will start looking inward and be like, hey, if we can't rely on the U.S. to be like our buddies anymore, which is kind of like what's happened, we better start building infrastructure. We better start tapping into those natural resources. We better start finding other people we can sell our goods to, because we're euchred if the United States no longer likes our partnership, right? And I think the other thing is like that's going on there is like very much like that quality that you have that I'm still working on, which is like just kind of like calling it like it is. And I think that's what Trump's doing. He's like, hey, this deal that we got sucks.
Yeah.
You know, and people will perceive that as this guy's an asshole and he's picking on the little guy and all that. But it's really, if you look at America as a business, it's a bad deal for America. Yeah. Like why did we start building cars in Canada? Right? It's like, for what reason? It's not there's not really that. Maybe there's a healthcare benefit and there's a little bit cheaper, and I'm guessing there's part of that.
Sure.
But really, they don't need us.
Yeah.
And so that is like just a businessman calling it like it is. And when you do that, and I'm guessing you probably received this as well, like you get pushback from it, right? You know, and some people think you're a dick, but it's like it's not that you're a dick. It's just that you have to do what's in the highest good for your company, right? Because if you don't, if you have an employee that sucks and is not producing the way he's going to produce, that may put your company in jeopardy, which may end up, putting a bunch of people's jobs in jeopardy and the economy and all that. And I think that's what Trump's seeing that we are not seeing, is my guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people lack self-awareness, to be honest with you. I think that logic too. I mean, like you said, they react emotionally, and I think that's a big problem. I mean, like I said, I wish our politicians here acted more, favorably to, want to support our country first. And I get it. Like we're more, we're Canada, right? Yeah. We try to make everybody happy and this, but it doesn't work. I don't feel that way. I feel like when you try to do that, you end up like where we are now, right? Where we're almost like a laughing stock of, especially with Trudeau right now, it's almost embarrassing, to be honest with you. I don't blame, again, I don't blame Trump. I don't know. The problem with this right now is, I've kind of, I don't want to say taken a step back with, watching what's going on in the world and politics and things like that. I've gotten to the point where, again, I feel like a lot of it's smoke and mirrors. I don't trust what's going on. Yeah. So for me, taking that position, it's hard for me to watch this stuff, realizing that they're just talking heads. They're not actually pulling strings. So why even watch it? And then the people that are commenting on it also have no clue because they're not in the rooms and understand the context behind it. So for me to even have an educated opinion on like the tariff perspective is really hard, because I'm not even dialed in with respect to the tariffs. When the tariffs came into play on Monday, the only thing that I was focused on was, okay, here's all of my HS codes for all the product coming across the border. What's subject to the tariffs and what's not. Yeah. And it was finding that out. And then what was really shitty about the Canadian government was, okay, well, here's what all the tariffs apply to, and here's all the HS codes. But it's kind of nuanced, because if the country doesn't, say, manufacture whey protein at this percentage, like an 80% or 90% whey isolate, then, send in this remission letter, and then like maybe we can get you the tariff cost back. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, you guys are never quick to act. So how long are you going to owe my money for?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And then number two, what happens if you don't send it back? And then I send product to Costco worth millions of dollars, and now I just lost millions of dollars on that deal. Right. Like so that was a really shitty scenario to be in. Like at the end of the day, and then at the same time, for me, that was I guess maybe even a polarizing perspective, that when I was talking about my podcast is that me and my buddy Scott would talk about politics quite a bit, because we took the approach of, let's not necessarily take sides. Let's tell you how certain governments will affect your wallet. Yeah. And when we started taking that approach, we started getting like a really positive feedback loop, because no matter who you are, when you start talking about making less money with people, it really starts getting people pissed off. Yep. And we were just bringing up simple policies. Like at the end of the day, all this red tape we have in Canada, a lot of the expenses that we have, a lot of this, that, at the end of the day, all that does is drive asset values up. And we were arguing against it, where, I own a lot of assets, but I'd rather not see our country go down the road that it's going in. So I was actually on the other side of things, where I didn't want certain things to increase asset values where, red tape, this and that, and, inflation and stuff like that. And, pumping all kinds of money into the economy, driving down the value of our dollar during COVID, this and that. So I was advocating against it, but we were still getting pushback from people that couldn't really see it. But we started changing the opinions of a lot of people when we started framing it that way.
Yes.
Where those mindsets and those policies really affect how much money you're left with at the end of the day. And that really actually helped, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And that's what I've noticed is that, like, this is what I've done my whole entire life is I usually just keep my head down and do my own thing. And that, as I brings up another question that I have for you, and that's usually what I do, even with politics. Like, it's like, there's this great clip with, Eddie Murphy where he's on like the Arsenio Hall, and Arsenio's Hall saying like, who are you going to vote for? And Eddie Murphy's like, I'm not voting for anyone. He's like, what politician has ever done anything for me? It's like, and this kind of guy goes, he's like, I got one person I answer to, and that's God. And it's like this great little rant kind of thing. And it's like, that's always the view I've kind of had, it's just like, I just did my own thing. Even in the bar business, it was the most competitive industry. There's, 20 other bars down there, got people on the street trying to sell $2 drinks, doing all that stuff. Yeah. But I just always did my own thing. And then that's what allowed me to kind of like, stay focused and survive and make money. But I also see that a little bit as, aside from the politics thing, a little bit of a weakness, because you said it, like a lot of like what allowed you to, propel yourself forward is making those connections with the people that helped you, reconfirm your own belief in yourself and the ability to do that. So I guess twofold. One is usually I am very similar to you. I just don't even watch the news. Like I sail with this guy that, watches CNN every day. And if I need to know anything, he tells me about it.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it'd be better if he was watching Fox, but whatever.
Sure.
And so he just gives me, so I've always known that, like, if anything major is happening, I'm going to hear about it. Right. And so I just remove myself.
Yeah.
But then like with COVID, with this, all of a sudden I feel like I'm thrust in it, and even the views on like my podcast and YouTube have been going up the more I'm talking about political shit.
Of course,
right.
Yeah.
And because everyone, they want to be involved in it because I think it's going to make a difference. And really at the end of the day, we're not going to do shit about it, essentially.
Yeah, potentially not. Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, it's interesting because you and I are both stepped back from it, but now we're kind of getting thrust into it. And so it's a weird gray area. What do you think about like relationships though? Because, one of my things has always been like, I kind of just do my own thing. Like I'm kind of like a lone wolf in some ways, And so like, how is that fucking me?
Yeah. I'm a talk like business relationships and things like that.
Yeah. I'm shifting gears here.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think it's really important. So one of the things that I really did, maybe I'll give an example of, something I went through, with Canadian Protein. I have a handful of vendors that I've spent probably hundreds of millions of dollars with supplying us over the years, decade, 15 years, whatever. I've met them, I met one guy like twice over that time period, one other guy like once. And these are like my two biggest vendors.
Yeah.
For me, it was always, give me the best pricing, the best service, and really the best pricing first, because I don't need your great service. Just make sure you say what you're going to do. You're going to do. But man, with BioSteel, relationship is very important with especially the buyers of these retail places. So, especially in the beginning, for me to meet with them in person, in the last year, I never traveled so much. I hate it too. I've never traveled so much in my life. I hate getting taken out of my routine. I don't like not having my gym and doing this and that. And, I hate living out of a suitcase or bag, whatever. And, but man, being able to walk into a room as the owner of a brand that just collapsed and convince them that it's not going to happen again doesn't have the same effect when you're on a Zoom call.
No, yeah.
It's not the same. There's some sort of energy that you bring to the table in person. Maybe if you're obviously an authentic person, and I think people are pretty good at reading, especially buyers, man. I think they're in those positions because they're probably good at reading people and reading brands maybe. But if it wasn't for that, I don't feel like BioSteel would be in the some of the retailers that it's still been able to be in.
Yeah,
and I think that was huge.
Yeah, I think I'm picking up on what it was. Is like, do you think the fact that you're just an authentic person, like you just that call it like it is mentality, is what makes you have good relationships?
100%.
Yeah, and it's not so much about like, because I always got wrapped up in, I was like, is it like that schmoozing? Like, and I don't think that you do that, so don't think that. But it's like, is it like, because you see people that do that, you see people that are like trying to schmooze and network and do all this stuff, and I always thought that was all bullshit.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's what that was kind of the confirmation I was looking for. Because I have like, set the intention to like live my life with integrity. It's like, I just want to be true to myself and to everybody around me at all times, right? And because of that, recently, I've been noticing that I've been building better relationships with people, right?
Yeah.
Where I struggle with is like, I would say, when it's like there's those negative consequences of me speaking my truth, like, hey, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, and where I think they're gonna not like me or whatever. So I think that's where I struggle still, and that got me in the past as that people pleaser. It got me into so much trouble, right? Like, and that's kind of like what Canada is in some ways. Like, it's like a big people pleaser, and now we're fucked, right?
Sure.
And so, but I think that's it. I think it's not about schmoozing, is and that's what the confirmation I was looking for. It's about just being authentic.
Yeah.
Man,
I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is, well, first of all, have you read that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People?
Yeah.
So I think that's the best business book. I don't think you even need another business book besides that, first of all. I feel, gotten good at listening to people and letting them talk because even if, for example, it's coming from maybe a superficial perspective where maybe you're not authentically interested in what that person has to say from the start, if you ask the right questions, they start talking, you could probably learn something from anybody.
Yes.
And I also think that that's one of the reasons why I've been able to be in the position that I'm in today is because I'll listen to anybody. I don't care if it's the homeless person on the corner. Like, he might have a perspective that I never thought of. And I don't consider myself better than anybody else either. So I'll take anybody's suggestion. I don't care what it is. And you can't really take suggestions from people if you're the only one ever talking. Yeah. So for me, it's not so much about like trying to smooch people. It's trying to get them to talk about themselves as much as possible, because nobody loves themselves better than they do. And and at the end of the day, if you can get them talking as much as possible, and especially if they're a key person, first of all, they're going to like you a lot more. Second of all, you could probably convince them somehow of your way of thinking. And third, you're probably going to be able to extract great ideas out of them, because everybody does have great ideas. It's whether or not you can utilize them or not. Yeah. So like that's kind of my perspective on that.
Yeah, and I love that. It's like, it's not like you're trying to do it like from this place of not having integrity. No. You're like literally genuinely saying, this person has probably information that will serve me, and so the only way I'm going to get that information out is by being like a genuine listener and really wanting to get to know them. So it's like it is in some ways you're getting something for yourself. It's not like you're just like blowing smoke up your ass.
I got a great story.
Yeah.
So I did this. I consciously did this the other day. And I don't really talk to this person too much. He's an elevator engineer. So I started talking about elevators.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck about elevators, right? But I was like, okay, I'm going to talk to this guy about elevators, right? Because this is his job.
Yeah.
He's probably not passionate about elevators either, but he's entrenched in it, so he's probably going to have some, whatever interesting story. I started asking him what interesting story, like what's the craziest shit you've ever seen in an elevator, this and that. I ended up finding out, which I had no idea, maybe other people do, but I guarantee you the vast majority of the population does not know this. If you cut the lines on an elevator, what typically happens? What have you seen?
Falls to the ground.
Exactly.
Or has locks in it or something.
Exactly, right? They don't fall to the ground. They actually go up because there's a counterweight.
Oh, no shit.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like that's just that he just started talking, right? He just started talking. So like that's a misconception that the movies have built, that the elevator will actually fall if the lines blow on an elevator, but they don't. They'll go up. The elevator box will go up, which that has no effect on my life whatsoever. And then he was like, if you're ever in an elevator that does that, just turtle in the middle of the elevator and you'll probably be fine, no matter how fast it goes. And that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not saying like this has no effect on my business whatsoever, but at the end of the day, like I just let him talk.
Yep.
and I found something cool out.
Yeah, and then the other thing that happens when you do that, which is, which allowed that story to be good, is like you may learn something that becomes a good story that you can share with other people, which then also makes you more likable as well. If you got good stories to tell. I golf I golf at Beach Grove, and I golf with all these guys that are well-to-do guys, and all they want is like good stories.
Sure.
They just want to be entertained essentially, and they want to have a laugh, and to step away from their businesses and stuff. So yeah, man. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but this has like been a great conversation, and like what's the plan? Like, what's going on? Like, where are we headed with BioSteel?
And, same thing. Like, I think, from a purely business perspective, I don't think I'm going to stop until I get that, $1 billion valuation. I think that's the end. That's the North Star. I mean, and by that, it becomes how can I explain this? By accomplishing a valuation of that, you've done a great job operating the business.
Yep.
And in retrospect, if you can accomplish that, then you've made a lot of the right choices down the road. So by having that, say, North Star and that type of valuation, you also build as a multiplier of, say, for example, revenue. The higher the multiple of revenue that you could get, the stronger business practices you've implemented into the business. So that also allows us to get to that North Star quicker if we just do a better job of operating, right? And all of the business ratios are in place, like where, the ratio of marketing with respect to revenue, the, employee wages with respect to revenue, like all the ratios are, EBITDA is at the right ratio of revenue, like all these type of things, or the margins or whatever are all the right margins. And if you can hit that valuation quicker, because say, for example, if you get to a point of, say, $200 million in revenue per year and you get a 5x multiple of revenue, then you're $1 billion, right?
Yeah.
But, for example, if that multiple ends up being a 3, you need to get to $333 million of revenue. And, you may not have done a great job of operating the business to get to that point because it took you a little bit longer and more revenue to do it. So there's targets in also this space where, okay, well, for a multiple, you have targets, and on the higher end, it's like, for example, like a 5x multiple of EBITDA of revenue, for example, and then say like a 12x multiple of EBITDA. But if you're not doing a great job, it might be, a 3x or a 2x of revenue, right? So, having a big goal like that, also kind of a big goal with also, shorter timelines, just means that you have to operate the business more efficiently, quicker, better, and with greater focus, right? And then from my other perspective, personally, I think it's I want to be able to do things on my terms and my own time, and do things like this. If I want to do this, I can. I think that's the ultimate goal, right? It's not answering to anybody, and if I want to do something, I do it. Yeah, and that's it.
I mean, $1 billion will help you to do that.
And that's the argument, right? So like what really is different? What's the difference in my life right now that say an amount of money? Because if I get X more amount of dollars, will it really change my life that much more? Not necessarily. But the next level is that level. So I always look at it in, like, I guess, increments. Like, what's really going to change my life to the next level in terms of like a monetary increment, and that would be it.
Yeah, and I also like just like leaning into like a dollar figure. It's like so many people get caught up in like passion and all of this stuff, and it's like, no, it's like you just explained it perfectly why just having like a dollar figure goal will make your business amazing. And think, not even that, like think about your employees and the staff and your family and everyone that benefits from you just having that goal. And it's like people have gotten pushback over time about making like money goals, but it's like, but if you're running a company that's worth $1 billion, man, you're doing a lot of fucking things right.
Oh yeah, you're contributing to the economy like crazy. You're contributing to people's lives like crazy. I have strong views on passion.
Yeah,
very strong. I don't believe in it at all. I don't believe that you should make that your North Star whatsoever.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I really disagree with that. I think that a lot of people will, it's going to be an endless hamster wheel if you take that approach.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are like waiting for that one thing that's going to like, this is what I'm supposed to do. But I mean, it's always been, for me, it's just like, the motivation has always been revealed to me through action. It's like once I get into building something, then I'm in it, and then there's just like, oh, this idea, and I keep moving forward. And so I think you're gonna get there, man. I think you're aligned with that intention, and you're gonna, like I said, you have this like great reputation, and even when I see you on LinkedIn, it's like it just feels like everyone's rooting for you. It's like there's just a good energy around everything that you're doing. So yeah, man, I'm not even have to wish you luck. I know.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Hey, listen, like it's easy to root for the underdog, right? And that's what we are.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like I'm trying to build something that went rock bottom.
Yeah, right.
So and the interesting thing about that is, and the reason why I'm leaning into it is because I think all of us can relate to rock bottom, even if technically it wasn't like, say, sleeping under an overpass. We all feel like we've hit rock bottom, and if you can relate to that as a brand and humanize it, you're going to make that brand successful, and that's the goal. Like I'm purposely doing that. Yeah. There's a reason why I'm doing that.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also, I get great feedback too.
Oh yeah.
I've asked questions on LinkedIn, and there's smart people out there. Why wouldn't I take their advice? Like I'm not too proud to ask for help. Like I don't care.
Yeah.
If it's gonna if it's gonna get me to that B faster, I'll take all the advice I can get.
Yeah, that's it.
It's free too at the end of the day.
That's it. And one of the things I've always said is like, because I'm really interested in like really getting to the root of like what really makes people tick and makes people get to levels like you're at, and guys like Elon Musk. But I think like you nailed it. Well, one of them is that authentic. I can't say the fucking word. Authenticity. Fucking wow. And which is I would call integrity. Like just speaking the truth. The other one is humility, though. Right? It's like just like be open to like learning, which it seems like that you are. And so yeah, man. Well, this has been great. We'll have to do it again another year or so.
For sure.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time.
Awesome, man.
Cool.